Hello everyone, this is Bbeltdan and welcome to another episode of me creating this Skeksis puppet. If this is your first episode, just a brief little review of what this is all about is that I'm making this puppet out of kind of inspiration and kind of my homage to Jim Henson's work, specifically with a movie called The Dark Crystal, because released pretty soon, if it's not out already, is a prequel series called The Dark Crystal, The Age of Resistance. So watching that trailer got me psyched up. It brought back a bunch of those old memories that I had as a child watching, the Gelflings and the Skeksis and all those other type of things. So it made me decide that I want to go ahead and see if I can actually make a, rod controlled or cable controlled puppet similar to the Skeksis. In the last episode, I went ahead and showed you that I've started actually skinning the outside, plus also finalized all of the control mechanisms in the top portion of the head. We still got the jaw and the neck to work on, but we'll touch those a little bit later. In this episode, I'm hoping to go ahead and continue on skinning it to the point to where we can actually start seeing the character that I am wanting to create and have the finalized look before I start putting on the detailed flesh, so to say, of the character, and also hopefully to try to get at least this particular control mechanism completely done to a point to where I can actually operate all of the features that is available on the head utilizing that. Plus we're also going to take a look at the jaw mechanism as well. So let's go ahead and jump straight to that. So as you can see, at least with the beak portion, I've got that all kind of initially tacked in for a first layer, rough layer of the skin for the beak and everything. But now it's time for me to go ahead and start working my way back to it. Now from the back, I'm going to need to go ahead and kind of, because it's all completely open, I don't want that open. I don't want it to where these cables could potentially jut out or move around, and I want this to look like it is a solid skull. So I'm going to start trying to design and 3D print some pieces that's going to go in the back to give this more shape, as well as contain all of these cables in to where it's nice and tight, so as it's moving around, these cables aren't necessarily flinging around and ruining the look of the effect and giving anomalies within the skin that the Skeksis is going to have. But we're also going to go ahead and in this episode actually start working on fleshing out the details, so to say, to where we actually get a good look of what this character is going to look like. And I'm going to be doing that with some foam. I went down to the store and bought some of this very thin foam, but I wanted to go thin because once again I'm trying to keep the weight down on this, because we still have, think of this as being the muscle around the Skeksis, and there's going to be a layer of skin on it, and I don't want to put a lot of weight on this, whether this is controlled by hand with the neck and head movements or by a cable operated. I don't want the weight to be very heavy. So we're going to start with this. If I need to, I can double layer, triple layer to try to get a little bit more effect. I can remove layers, so on and so forth. So we're going to use this to actually start trying to tack this all in and see how that looks. Starting from the beak that I've already got layered on with the plastic here and working my way back. Leaving this for the end because I still need, as I mentioned, to print some 3D more pieces out to attach to this and skin this around so it's not a lot of weak spots when I start applying the foam in. I don't want any of those weak spots there. So but just for the sake of this episode, so we can actually start getting something that looks a little bit different than this hideous thing, we'll start skinning that. Okay, so the process that I'm going to be using to start foaming this skull is relatively simple. I'm just going to start taking my sheets of foam, laying it on top of the skull here, and start trying to come up with patterns. In that pattern, it's going to be also keeping in details that extends past the basic skull features that you see here, such as anything that we want to see, such as like horns or extensions of the beak or what have you, such as right here there's going to be a little point coming out from the beak, so that's going to be all done on the foam. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then I mirror that pattern onto the other side, and then I'm going to use a mixture of super glue and hot glue and contact cement to start laying that onto this skull. So rather than me showing you that step by step, with the magic of editing, I just simply snap my fingers, and y'all should go ahead and start seeing the end result. And here it is, not fully completed. I still have some additional little work that I need to do, actually a lot of additional work I need to do to kind of foam out a bunch of the details, because this foam is supposed to be the muscles and stuff that's underneath the skin. So a lot of the characteristics of this Skeksis is going to be coming out inside the foam work. For example, as you can see here, I have a little of a horn on the beak that I've added in right here, and that is all added in by the foams. When I cover it with whatever skin I decide to use, that's going to be very prominent and stiff. So I got a couple of other additional features that I want to start to flesh out. And I did not have the back done yet. I'm leaving that open to the last minute in case there is any fine adjustments or tunings and stuff that I want to do with the mechanism before I close it up. In fact, I actually had to go back in and fish this wire out to connect to the snarling effect because that came loose. I don't have that glued in. I need to do that. But I wanted to go ahead and show y'all this so y'all can at least see, because it's at a point to where it's actually starting to come together and look like an actual Skeksis. So y'all can get an idea from this point of where I'm going with it, and it's starting to actually take form. So by the next episode, I should have all the foaming done on the head, so it should be time to start skinning it. Okay, everybody, and to finish up this episode, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the jaw. This is something that I've been working on. Now, my original intention was to have it to where the jaw was going to be cable operated, just like with the rest of the head, as well as the neck. But playing with this, I started kind of actually going back to the idea of what if this was more like operated like a traditional puppet, very similar to how the actual Skeksis, I can't talk today, how the actual Skeksis was operating. And one of y'all have actually, contact me, message me and say, well, why don't you go ahead and try thinking about doing this? And if you're going to think about do it now, because it'll be easier to integrate than much later when I go along. And you are absolutely right. So what I've ultimately decided to do is to actually see about doing both. Having it to where it is cable operated, but also to where if I want to, I can also operate it with my hand. But the problem is how do I do that and have it to where I can do both? And ultimately the solution is to have it to where I can have the lower jaw to be removed and swapped out accordingly to what I decide to do. If I decide to go ahead and operate it completely by cables, I can slap that jaw in with all the cables operating it. But if I decide to do it by hand, then I just take that jaw out, put the jaw in. That will allow me to operate by hand. So after some thinking and some toying around, I've actually came up with a solution. And my solution is here is the lower jaw. And this does indeed slide in. If you notice, from this side right here, we have two little holes right there. And those holes, not this big one here, but these two small ones here, those two holes actually line up with these two little hooks that I have here at the bottom. So I can take this and just simply slide it in. If I can line this up, it's a tight fit, but that's the way I want it. So once I get it in, I just go ahead and push this back, or I'm sorry, forward. And just like that, the jaw is now on. So now I can go ahead and put my hand in and start to operate the jaw and the neck utilizing my arms and hand. So, so it's actually starting to work out well. And back to the original premise of this, is that if I decide for whatever reason I just want to put this on the cable operation, I just simply just push this back, pop it out, take the new one, and pop it right in, and continue to operating it. But I won't know if it's going to work until I actually start to try it. But in theory, I think this actually works out very well. Alright everyone, and that concludes this episode of me building a Skeksis. So far, as you can see, I've gotten to a point to where it's actually starting to look like something. It no longer just looks like some sort of strange alien or robot, but it actually looks recognizable as something organic. You look at it, you'll see either a bird or a dragon, but hopefully when the skin is on, you'll look at it and you'll actually be able to recognize it being a Skeksis. Now, it's not supposed to look like any particular Skeksis from the actual movie or the upcoming series. This is an original design. So hopefully when you look at it, you'll be like, oh, it's an original Skeksis, not Chamberlain or the Emperor or something like that. So, but we'll see. In the next episode, I'm hoping to actually have it to where all of this foam work is done. All the details are done, so when we start to actually be able to put the skin actually on. And I have a couple of ideas on how I'm going to apply the skin, what I'm going to use for skin. It's not going to be latex, which was what I believe that they used in the actual show, the actual movie. It's going to be some other materials and things, so you'll have to wait till the next episode if I get there. Once again, I'm only having about a week of free time in between these episodes, so I don't know exactly how much progress I'm going to be able to get done. But we'll get that done, and I'm going to continue building this up utilizing this jaw right here, which is going to be hand operated, as well as the neck. But I should be able to also start working on the additional jaw as well, and hopefully have it to be able to be swapped out. So that is where we're at right now, and once again, my goals for the next episode is to start actually having it skinned with the actual material, so we'll actually start being recognizable as an actual creature. All of the foam work should be done, and I will also look at trying to finish terminating all of these cable ends so we can actually start applying it to the control mechanism that we have and actually play around and start seeing a lot of movement and how this was intended to work. So until then, I just want to say this is Bbeltdan. This is Creating the Skeksis. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.